Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Sunday, the 7th of June, 2026. I'm Graham Hughes. Well done on making it this far. Hello, hello. We've got Lost Missionary in the chat. We've got Person Impersonator. We've got Liam Devlin. We've got Diz saying morning all. Sphere Lance in the chat as well. If you want to join our beautiful friends in the beautiful chat, all you need to do is hit the beautiful subscribe button and wait for approximately 60 of your Earth seconds. Standard rules apply. Don't be a troll, all right? Just don't do it. Let's get the telly working there. So, got something going on in the background. Right, what I've decided in my infinite wisdom, which isn't infinite and it isn't wise, but I've decided that Sunday sermon should try and veer away from politics a little bit to differentiate it from the morning brew, which is obviously we talk about the news and stuff like that. So let's talk about other stuff. Let's talk about travel. Let's talk about pop culture. Let's talk about music and cinema and the arts and the World Cup and whatever. Yeah. And I think we can do that together. And today I want to talk about two movies that have come out in the last couple of weeks and absolutely monstered it in the box office. Thank you very much. On a budget of one of them less than $1 million, and it's taken 175 million at the box office and counting. So that's a hell of a return on your investment, isn't it? Unless you're the poor art director of said movie, Obsession, who only got paid $7,000, and now the movie has gone on to make over 175 million at the box office. But yeah, so there's two movies just come out last month called Obsession and Backrooms, and they're two horror movies. I've seen Obsession, haven't seen Backrooms yet. I do want to go and see it. I might go and see it this Wednesday. But I'm not here to give a review of the films. I'm here to talk about the environment around the films and how they got made and what the importance are for the future for Hollywood. Person Impersonator, hello. Morning, Gillian. Says Lost Missionary. Hello. I just gotta Google something. Do people watch? Okay. Yes. So there was a story last year about YouTube being only the second to beat the BBC as the BBC as the media destination, and there was a story just 3 days ago saying that YouTube has overtaken Netflix in average daily viewing around the world. So YouTube, which is free, we're on it at the moment, is actually getting more viewers, surprisingly, because it's free, than Netflix. And this is a major shift to people watching YouTube on television. You might be watching this on television. If you are, well done. I hope you're watching it in 4K. You know, as it's meant to broadcast. You can see every line under my eyes, every spot, every wrinkle. Anyway, quick pop in to say hi. I'm at the BTCC at Alton Park, so my signal is crap. Hugs to all. Thanks very much, Shropshire Chris, who is, I guess, working as a marshal today. Either that or a racing driver. Don't be watching this while you're racing around the track, Chris. Don't do that. Been following Backrooms since early days. It's a great concept. So the concept, I don't want to do too many spoilers for the movies themselves, but Obsession, just to make very clear, it is a story about a cursed monkey paw, essentially. If you remember that episode of The Simpsons with the cursed monkey paw, that was the inspiration for Obsession. The main protagonist makes a wish, and it goes horribly, horribly wrong. He wishes for a girl that he likes to love him more than anyone else in the world. Yeah, and then she does. Yeah, and Backrooms is based on something that grew out of 4chan, actually, but then grew on YouTube. This idea of this, there's a certain word for it, but it's like spaces that are just a bit spooky and a bit weird and a bit, off kilter. It would just be like an old office building or something. What's it? Lemnant spaces or something? Someone's going to tell me in the chat what it's called. But it's got a certain name, and it's about these areas that humans find a little bit liminal space. I think that's the word for it. I'm going to look it up. Liminal. Have I just made up a word? Liminal spaces. Liminal, as in subliminal. So these are the physical or psychological in-between places like airports, stairwells, or empty malls. often photographed unsettlingly devoid of people. They evoke a surreal mix of nostalgia, comfort, and unease because they are meant for passing through rather than staying. So liminal spaces. So you've got these two sort of DIY films that have come out, Obsession and Backrooms, and this feels like a genuine cultural moment because they haven't come from the usual Hollywood pipeline. Now look, I'll put my cards on the table right now. We've already had a false dawn with this, with the Blair Witch Project, which was the first movie to use the internet to really sell itself for a tiny, tiny amount, get people absolutely obsessed with the idea of this movie coming out. And when it did come out, it made over 100 million at the box office off a budget of something like $27,000. One of the biggest bang for bucks in the history of cinema. And we thought maybe that'll be give rise to a generation of new filmmakers going out. Also, we had 28 days later coming out around the same time, just a couple of years later, in which they used Sony PD-150 cameras. These are not even HD digital cameras. They're very, very grainy. If you watch it back now, it looks like it was filmed on someone's camcorder, which essentially it was. PD-150s went much better than a camcorder. And liminal, not liminal. Sorry, Harry. Yeah, it's liminal spaces. Yeah, Tommy's got it right. Watching you on TV, you look great, Graham. Oh, thanks, Sid. Oh, so sweet, so kind. Ooh. Oh, that reminds me, I should set a goal, shouldn't I, for Confetti? Since we're not talking about politics, we're talking about something else. But hopefully it'll be a little bit more cheery than it normally is in the morning where I'm just going, God, I hate Trump, I hate Putin, I hate Farage, I hate Netanyahu, the four pony men of the apocalypse. So yeah, these are not prestige dramas by established auteurs, not superhero spin-offs, not nostalgia products, not corporate IP extensions. These are horror films from very young. In fact, the director of Obsession is 27, which means that I don't think he was alive. I don't think he had been born when that episode of The Simpsons, The Treehouse of Horrors with the cursed monkey paw. I don't know if he was even born when it was aired. So he's taken something that, like, you know, to him must feel like the Twilight Zone for us, which is funny because obviously the Treehouse of Horror is based on the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits. Hi, Saz. I was typing a greeting to every... I missed the stream, but started and it vanished. Oh, dear. Unfortunately, the Blair Witch Project gave rise to shit like the August Underground series. Don't watch those films, trust me. I won't. I've never even heard of them, but yeah, I won't. But, the found footage thing in Blair Witch wasn't new at all. That's been done years earlier with Cannibal Holocaust. You could argue, you could make an argument that Dracula, the book, is a found footage book because it's all based on letters and diary entries from the protagonist. It's not written like a traditional story. So you could argue that is found footage. Obviously, it's found material. So yeah, the concept behind that, I don't think was the main thing. I think the main thing was the fact that you could make a movie that made a shitload of money at the box office for very cheap. And I've spoken about this before. I mean, I've been banging on this drum for a long, long time. If you want to set up a movie studio, the best way to do it is to go into horror. Go into horror because that's the way you can make movies for very little money, right? That take a shitload at the box office. Universal, the studio Universal, they made Dracula, they made Frankenstein, they made Wolfman, they made The Invisible Man, they made Bride of Frankenstein, they made Son of Dracula. They made all these quite like schlocky movies now looking back, but these great horror movies of the 1930s and established themselves as this young upstart film company, and then off the back of that they went on to make all the Universal movies that we've come to know and love. And in the same way, New Line Cinema in the 1980s, they were the studio behind Freddy and Jason, the Scream franchise. That was New Line, and that gave them enough money to invest in something like, I don't know, the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings movies were paid for by Freddy Krueger invading people's dreams. So, and now we're seeing the same with A24. So one of these movies, the first movie I mentioned, Obsession, is being distributed by A24. And A24 cut its teeth making documentaries and horror movies. They started distributing them and they started making them themselves. So if you look at sort of the great horror movies of the last 10, 15 years, stuff like Get Out, are distributed, and X and Maxine and Pearl, they were all A24 films. They're the sort of masters at this sort of level of cinema. And off the back of that, this New York-based studio, it's not based in LA, I don't think. I think it's based in New York, has really, really taken off. And people are watching A24 films. They went after films that didn't cost much money, didn't have big names in them necessarily, and would do well at the box office. And also, they went after movies that they thought would do well at the Oscars, and they have. I mean, A24 released Moonlight. They also, which one, obviously in 2017 when they beat La La Land. Everyone forgets it. But what movie was it that actually won the Oscar? Because it wasn't La La Land. It was called Moonlight. And that was about a black gay man's experiences. And that was it wasn't a horror movie. It was more of a drama more than anything. And then we had Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was also an A24 film. So you got this pipeline of A24 films that have been coming out, but it started with horror. And now we're seeing just how profitable it can be. If you think about a movie that makes 200 million at the box office, but it costs 200 million to make the damn thing. And I will stress as well that Obsession and Backrooms opened to bigger audiences in the US than the new Star Wars film, Grogu, Mandalorian and Grogu. Like, a Star Wars film came third in the box office after Obsession and Backrooms. Wow. And yeah, like I said, this isn't based on superhero fucking spin-offs. It's not nostalgia bait. It's not corporate IP. These are horror films made by very young, internet savvy filmmakers who built audiences on YouTube. That's the important thing. Both of them built audiences on YouTube. They learned the craft. They tested ideas and developed instincts outside the traditional movie making system. And when these tech dickheads in LA and in Silicon Valley talk about moving fast and breaking things, right? I think this is what they've got in their stupid little heads, right? They believe that they can, make something better by destroying what's there, and that's the wrong way to look at it. The better way to look at it is look to improve what we have, right? So not to destroy what we have and then just go, like Trump did with Iran, like Trump did with the Medicare in America, just destroy it and then go, I don't know what we're going to replace it with. Like what Farage did in the UK with this move out of the European Union, where he said, we'll move out the European Union and then, I don't know. And then he has the audacity, sorry, a bit of politics here, to say, but they didn't do it right. The Tories didn't do it right because the Remainers wouldn't let us do it. And all these myths, this gaslighting, right? Here's some facts for you. Farage stood down over 300 MPs for the Brexit Party so the Tories could win. Farage backed the Tory Brexit deal. Farage backed Boris Johnson getting an 80-seat majority. Once Boris Johnson had that 80-seat majority in December of 2019, he could do what he liked. He had an 80-seat majority. He could change the constitution of the country. He could depose the monarch. He could declare war on another country if he wanted to. He had an 80-seat majority. He could do anything he dreamed of. He wasn't restrained by Ramonas saying, you can't do that. They pulled out of Horizon. They pulled out of Erasmus. They pulled out of Euratom. They pulled out literally every single European institution they could feasibly pull out of. And now they want to pull out of the European Court of Human Rights. So yeah, you got these politicians, these gobshites, and some gobshites in Silicon Valley who are like, let's destroy something. And they've got nothing to replace it with. A good example of this is Elon Musk destroying the chances of high-speed rail in America and saying, we're going to have a Hyperloop instead. And the Hyperloop is shite. It's a very, 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 very bad idea that doesn't work in any circumstances. It's like taking all of the awfulness of a monorail system, throw in some maglev technology, and then suck people down a hole through a tube. And it's just like, that can never work. It can never work because we live in the real world, not the opening sequence of Future fucking Armor. So yeah, what these kids have done, that's a bit patronizing, these young men have done making these movies is they've shown that you don't need to break the system to improve it massively. And I am getting sick and tired of seeing stuff where they get rid of any practical effects or practical backgrounds or whatever, and they make it all computer generated. And this isn't to do necessarily with AI. This has been going on for years. One of the worst Star Wars movies, as far as I'm concerned, is Star Wars Episode 2, because it relies so much on green screen. And then you look at the difference between the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy by Peter Jackson. The Hobbit trilogy is shite, and one of the reasons it's shite is just there's too much computer-generated nonsense going on. The only time you should notice that something is being computer-generated is during the credits, where you see all the VFX artists' names. That should be it. If you're watching a movie and you're thinking, "Oh, that looks a bit CGI. Oh yeah, that looks a bit computer-generated. Oh yeah," and I was watching. Having those practical effects makes all the difference. It genuinely does. And little things that you don't think of, but like the glow from lightsabers that like actually you see it on their faces, which they do in the new Star Wars movies, is quite clever actually, because you would have the glow on the face. I was watching Spider Noir last night. There's a character in it who's like Electro, and he's got like these electricity bolts coming down his cheek, as he's talking and stuff. There's a scene, and I noticed he was in a car, and you got these sort of little bits of electricity coming down his face, and it was reflected in the car window. You could actually see, and I thought that's quite clever. That's going the extra mile with the special effects. Maybe a little bit me going, being a cinephile, just going, oh well, I spotted the special effect there, but it worked. It worked in the context of the film. It made you feel immersed in the film because it didn't look out of place. Perhaps if that reflection hadn't been there, it wouldn't have looked out of place. So yeah, I think this is a really positive thing. And when I think about Backrooms as well, I mean, I talk about the backgrounds of movies. You got the volume, which is this big. They have these big screens around the characters, which is made into a big thing. It's been used a lot in movies in the last few years. So it looks like they're on an alien planet, or looks like they're on somewhere on Earth that they couldn't possibly be. And I think I would say, well, that's kind of cool, and it's set up so as the camera moves, the background moves in parallax in sequence with the camera moving, and that can make some really effective sequences. But there's certain things that you just can't do on a soundstage, like when it's supposed to be cold but you don't see people's breath, when it's supposed to be hot but people aren't sweating, and they're walking around with a jacket on. It's like just went up to 15 degrees C. Did you notice it was 12 degrees C at the start of this show? I told you my house was cold. Lost faith in Star Wars, says Tommy. Oh, geez, I lost faith in the Force, Tommy. But I think they could win me back by doing a trilogy in the Old Republic, make it a 15 in a war film, and focus on the early days of the Jedi and the Sith Wars. That could be great. Actually, Tommy, the best thing Star Wars has done since probably Empire Strikes Back is Andor, as far as I'm concerned. The first season of Mandalorian was fantastic because it didn't tap into too much Star Wars lore. When they did start to do that, we had to get Boba Fett's armor or something shite like that, I was like, oh, go away. No, can't be dealing with this. I don't want, I don't want it tied in with the rest of Star Wars. And one of the things that people have complained about The Mandalorian and Grogu, this movie that's come out, is that it tries too hard to tie it into the rest of Star Wars, where it shouldn't. It should be a standalone adventure. But that's what Andor did really well. Spoilers here for Andor, but there's no Jedis in it. There's no magic. There's no like the one. There's no prophecy. There's no kid who turns up and goes, "Oh, I'm gonna move this X-wing with my brain." None of that. None this Skyhook comes in and saves the day at the last minute. It doesn't happen like that. People die in it. Like people you think are like the main characters. They bloody die, and it's harsh, and it's like there's one scene where there's a couple of rebels, and it's a couple and they're in love with each other. And one of them gets just killed accidentally by one of the other rebels who's a bit too, gung-ho and gun-hungry. And they end up dying in their lover's arms. And it's like, okay, that wouldn't happen in a normal Star Wars movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might die of old age, or you might die so that the Millennium Falcon can get out of there. But, yeah, the reality is that, like, that they wouldn't, that everyone would be wearing some, what could you call it? Game of Thrones season 7 plot armor. Don't worry, they're not going to die. But yeah, Andor, really, really recommend it, Tommy. If that's what you want for the the idea of the making a 15 in a war film. Honestly, Andor, I can't recommend it enough. It doesn't need to be set in the Star Wars universe. It just happens to be, but it's answering that question of what do normal people do who aren't magical bloody space wizards and can't fly, magical ships that can defy gravity. Just what do you do if you're down on the ground and you're, trying to fight back against encroaching fascism, fighting back against the fash. And it also shows the fash as well. You've got like prolonged scenes. You really get to know the fash and like what's going through their heads. You spend time with them having a meal with their family, which you never see in the original movies. I mean, they're just basic henchmen in the original. Even Darth Vader's a henchman in the original Star Wars movie. That does sound like what I was thinking. Yeah, Tommy, get onto Andor. Honestly, I wouldn't put you on a bum steer. It is honestly really, really good. Harry Flashman says rebellion is not for the sane. Yes. I just saw a thing that said Kubrick destroyed every single set, so none of it would ever be reused in some rubbish production down the road. Says Paulie Donkey. Yeah. When I was younger, me and my friends got this idea that in McDonald's, if you didn't rip up the cups at the start that the drinks came in, or the containers that the French fries came in, that they'll reuse them. So we always made a point of ripping them so they couldn't reuse them for somebody else. They don't. They use fresh ones. They don't dig, dig old things of fries out the bin. But when I was a kid, it seemed like, okay, yeah, let's rip stuff up. Yay, woo! Not using this again, McDonald's, which was a bit childish. But then I was a child. But there you go. Yeah. So I think Kubrick had the same idea. But I don't think that was unique to Kubrick. Actually, sets were destroyed, quite regularly. Props for movies generally destroyed at the end of the movie, and if they were spirited off, it was usually by one of the actors or the first assistant director or something. So I'll have that. But yeah, generally speaking, that was the decision, wasn't it, to break down the sets. Colin says, old man whispers Rosebud, drops a snow globe, nurse rushes into room. Strangely, everyone knows his last word. My dad regularly went to the pictures. He hated Citizen Kane. Oh, I'm sorry that he hated Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane's one of the few movies that I actually went to see with my dad when I was younger. I'm not that old, but I mean, there was a screening of it in Manchester, and it was really good. I mean, it's a really, really good movie, and yeah, we don't know if that was the way it's shot. There could be someone else in the room. He could have been saying Rosebud over and over again. I don't know, but yeah, the idea is that he says Rosebud and there's no one in the room, and then the whole film is about why his last word was Rosebud. Finding out. Star Wars Holiday Special featuring Boba Fett. Yeah, Star Wars Holiday Special. I mean, you hear about how bad it is, but you can't understand how bad it is until you watch it. It's not just tragically awful, it's also really boring as well. The first half hour of the show is just Wookiees talking Wookiees to each other. One's called Grumpy, another one's called Lumpy, and the other one's called Martha. And they go, and they want to watch telly. They want to watch like a baking show with some guy who made it, like basically the American equivalent of I don't know, of Jamie Oliver is on the telly, and then they watch some dancing on the, like, it's a hollow deck thing, but not hollow deck, a little hollow projection things, and then there's a scene which is set in the Mos Eisley Cantina. And for some reason, B. Arthur from the Golden Girls is the bartender, and they have to shut because the Imperials shut them down. But the customers don't want them to leave. So in order to get them to leave, B. Arthur sings a song about friendship. I mean, I want to say that's the low point, but it's not, because there is a scene at the very end where Carrie Fisher, clearly coked off her tits, sings a song to the tune of Star Wars. Yeah, let's not talk about it. Famously, that George Lucas, the director of Star Wars, once said that if he had a hammer and enough time, he would destroy every copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special in existence. But unfortunately for him, the internet came along. Although I did see it in the 90s when there was a VHS tape being passed around, like, I don't know, schoolboys around the country, of like, we got Star Wars Holiday Special. Like, God, you won't believe how bad it is. And you're like, oh, whatever. Like, I cringed so hard when I was watching it. I remember, like, it was like the feeling of watching a horror movie. Like, I had a cushion. I was like literally holding a cushion like this, going, make it stop. And it is really, really bad. Citizen Kane is on that list. I doubt will ever get remade. Godfather, Apocalypse Now. Yeah, because it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to. Like Casablanca. Citizen Kane, and Crank being the 3 best movies of all time. Tony Gilroy is an amazing filmmaker. When I saw his name attached to Star Wars, I said, oh, my taste will be saved. Yeah. He's fantastic. He's absolutely fantastic. And the only issue I have with Andor is that it clearly should have been a 5-season run, and they only got 2 seasons out of it. Oh, man. I'm in a minority when I say I don't get Star Wars. I'm not trashing the franchise. The first film did nothing for me. I never saw the others. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, at least you saw it. The Star Wars Holiday Special was a pantomime script with a Star Wars veneer. Oh, no, it wasn't. Stop that. I'm sorry, Pete. Pete's seen it. He's got the mark. he's got the mark. He's seen it. He's seen the Star Wars. It's very bad. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about stuff like Star Wars, Star Trek, or Stargate, or Star Wars, like, they're not for everyone, you know. And then this is like we talk about food, right? And there's some food that I don't like. So I don't like peanut butter too much. You know, I'll have a satay, which is a bit like hot peanut butter, but whatever. You know, I generally speaking, I'm not a mad fan of it, right? But there's some people out there who don't like Marmite. And that's fine. And we all get along and we make a joke about it. You either love it or you hate it. It's quite Marmite. We use that as an expression. But one problem is when people go, I don't like this thing, so nobody should, right? And I struggle with it sometimes because I look at something like Mrs. Brown's Boys and I really do wish that didn't exist. But when it comes to things like soap operas and stuff like that, I don't like them. I don't watch them. But I understand why people do. I get it. You know, and if you work in an office, if you work in you go out and meet your colleagues, they might not know your family, they might not know your friends, they might not know what's happening in your life, but they watch the same soap opera as you. And then when you're having a chat each day, you know, you got to think about something new to tell them. You can say, oh, this new thing has happened in the soap opera that I'm watching. And like, oh, well, I'm watching that same soap opera. And then they talk about the characters in it. And obviously there's a point where people go a bit too far and they think it's actually real. And these, you know, these soap opera villains get like death threats from people who are like, how dare you do that to Deirdre Barlow? And it's like, you do know that's not a real person. You do know that's an actor playing a bad person. But yeah, and I think we you know, and I fall for this as well. So I'm not dissing anyone. But like when people say, well, you like X when it comes to music or it comes to movies or it comes to food, whatever, you like this and I don't like it. Therefore, I think you're a worse person than me. Or I think that your opinion on anything else is not valid. I think you could argue this in politics. Like if someone is a big fan of Nigel Farage, well, you know, they'd like a bit of fash. That's just the way it is. But yeah, you got to remember, 1979 was an interesting time in America, and it's before Empire. No one really knew what the rest of the so-called majesty of Star Wars would really be that. Yeah, they remade It's a Wonderful Life in the 70s point of view of Donna Reed. It's called It Happened One Christmas. Oh. I don't think I'll enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, remakes, not a problem. If it's, I like it when they take a movie that's not very good. Like I think of John Carpenter's The Thing, which took the original from the 1950s, the Thing from Another World, and made a much better movie. Made a really good movie out of the same sort of concept. One of the most famous sort of thriller horror films, alien invasion films ever made. The Thing is a fantastic movie. The Fog is a fantastic movie. John Carpenter again. But then you get people who remake Halloween. John Carpenter's Halloween. Someone else remakes it, and you're like, what's the point? It's a great movie. You know, just stop it. Leave it alone. Do something new. Do something a bit different. And one of the other things I like about Obsession and Backrooms, although they did have, you know, Obsession was inspired by The Simpsons, and Backrooms obviously had a big following over the last I think it's been going for like 5 years, 6 years, something like that, online. And they, they took it to this extreme of making a movie about it. But it wasn't necessarily, neither of them were based on a pre-existing IP, in that it wasn't based on a comic book. It wasn't a remake. It wasn't a sequel. It wasn't a thing that Hollywood keep trying to do. And this is something that is maddening about Hollywood, is the fact that they've become so conservative in the last 20 years. You look at the big box office draws. I mean, I saw one last year where it was like all 10 movies that made the most money at the box office were all sequels or recycling of old IP. Every single one of them. And I was like, oh my God. And the stuff like that, the Disney remakes, or they've remade these great movies, like they remade Aladdin and The Lion King and The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. And you're like, why? Why are you remaking these movies? They were fine. They remade Pinocchio and it was fucking awful. There was another version of Pinocchio that came out around the same time, because Hollywood loves to do two things at once. Volcano, Dante's Peak, the Armageddon, Deep Impact. The only time that Hollywood had two movies that were about to come out at the same time, or planning to come out, and they combined forces, was Towering Inferno with Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, which is a fucking fantastic movie. But yeah, they like the two movies coming out at once. Guillermo del Toro made a version of Pinocchio, and it was way better than the Tom Hanks one, the official Disney one. It was way better, because Pinocchio is quite a dark tale. But they took all that out of the live action remake of the night, that came out with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is in another terrible, terrible, terrible remake, which was actually the Coen brothers. This is quite unbelievable. Like, the Coen brothers are two of the best directors, filmmakers, I should say, in Hollywood. These are the people who made The Big Lebowski and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? These are the people who made No Country for Old Men. They are very, very, very good directors, and yet they did make a remake of The Lady Killers, the 1950s Ealing comedy with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness. They remade this movie. It was just shite. It was just, why are you remaking this? But then they remade True Grit, and that was fantastic. So, some you win, some you lose. But the worst remake, I think. Come on, tell me in the chat, right? Question, right, to you all in the chat. What's the worst remake you've ever seen? I think Planet of the Apes has got to be pretty high, the Tim Burton version, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is a remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from 1971. Tim Burton again. The Tim Burton version. Oh my God, it's so bad. It's just so bad. It's just so awfully, awfully bad. My bugbear is series that start great, lose a bit on ratings, then get cancelled with no conclusion. Is why, though, it's not the best finish. I like that Game of Thrones at least finished at the end. Yeah, I get that Lost mystery, but at the same time, I just think of the end of Lost and the end of Game of Thrones, and sometimes I'm like, maybe sometimes it's better that we don't know how it ended, so we can just like make it up in our minds, because whatever our imagination comes up with, it's going to be better than that. Although I have to say, in defense of Lost, I don't think it really dropped the ball until the very last episode, whereas the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones were just terrible. They were movies of people who just didn't give a fuck anymore. They just didn't, TV series that didn't give a fuck anymore. It reminded me a lot of the Hobbit films, and I say that because the Lord of the Rings films were so good, and we were expecting more of that for the Hobbit, and what we got was absolutely awful. But that's not entirely Peter Jackson's fault. Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be directing those, which would have been fantastic, I'm sure. And the movie studio that was funding it, said to Peter Jackson, like, Guillermo del Toro's dropped out, you have to direct it, or we're going to move production to like the Czech Republic or something. And he was like, oh right, okay, so that means that thousands and thousands of craftspeople and film people and people behind the scenes, thousands of jobs in New Zealand will not be created to make this movie. And so that, but because of the Hollywood thing of like, we've got the poster and we've got a release date, we've got to get going, we've got the poster and the release date. And it's like, sometimes that can work out quite well because it gets people off their arse to actually make the bloody movie. So not tinkering with it for the next 15 years. But in another way, it's shit. It's shit because it means that we have we had in the situation of the Hobbit, Peter Jackson just didn't have the time to prep for the films, and that prep time is so evident. And if you watch any of the behind the scenes things, it honestly, watching the behind the scenes stuff of Lord of the Rings was an absolute joy. I remember Christmas 2001, 2002, 2003 when the extended editions came out on DVD, and you had all the extra stuff in there. You had commentary from all the cast and the crew and everyone, and it was fantastic. Watching the behind the scenes stuff for The Hobbit, it's like everyone's miserable, everyone's frantic, no one knows what's going on. There's a scene where Peter Jackson, God love him, is trying to direct a scene, a battle scene, and he's like, he doesn't have a script to go on, he's just shooting stuff that he might use later, and it's like, oh no, and it is like watching a car crash rather than a joyous thing. Graham, you're not wrong. One of the superpowers of a writer filmmaker is that when you don't like the ending, you can retcon it in your own mind. I'll fix it in post, frontal cortex. That's very true, Paulie Donkey. And I do that a lot with movies and TV shows. I come up with like how I would have done it. I've done that with Star Wars, the prequel trilogy. I didn't do it with the sequel trilogy because I don't think the sequel trilogy should exist. To me, that's not Star Wars. It's just fan fiction. And it's terrible fan fiction because the first one was a remake of A New Hope. Fine, whatever. The second one was shit. It had some really stupid moments in it that infuriated me, but it took it in an interesting direction, setting up for episode 9, where instead of the Jedis being the people to come back to save the day, and it, instead of it being Daisy Ridley who kills the Emperor, it was actually going to be the people of the Empire rising up against the Empire. I saw Finn as leading a stormtrooper rebellion, and I saw the idea that the kid who uses the Force to grab the broom at the end of Star Wars Episode 8, I saw a continuation of that where it's the people who take out the Empire. They rise up all over the galaxy to say, no, we're not putting up with this. We've had to put up with this shit for the last 50 years. We can't be dealing with it anymore. But yeah, I wish those movies didn't exist, to be honest with you. I think they didn't do the Star Wars legacy any good. But then I have to be honest, the prequel trilogy, I understand that George Lucas wanted to take it in a new direction. I get that, and he wanted to make it seem like a very different era, which I think he did. But if you take away the look and feel of it, and just look at like the characterization, the stories that are told, the internal conflicts, the Anakin story makes no sense at all. He's taken by the Jedi to be a child's Jedi, but he was a slave, and there's no he goes, oh, I haven't got enough money to release your mum. I thought, okay, go back to Coruscant, right? Takes 2 days on the fucking plane, right? Get the plane to Coruscant and get some money, right? Get some gold, whatever you need, get a Beskar, and then fly back to Tatooine and release your mum. But no, his mum is enslaved. Could you imagine this? Like, your mother was enslaved. She was living in servitude to some flying orange creep. Blue creep. And just what? He doesn't go back and get his mum. I mean, and then he has a bad dream about his wife dying, and he goes, "Oh, that's it. I'm gonna kill all these kids now." Sorry, spoilers. I'm just like, what? I mean, what? That's it. That's all it took. I mean, come on. Give me something to go on here. Give me a love triangle. Give me a sense of betrayal by the Jedi. Give me Anakin going off on a suicide mission. And not knowing it's a suicide mission and just barely surviving by the skin of his teeth. And he's like, you bastards, you did this to me. How dare you? Don Donovan says, great idea, Graham. Just one problem. That would have cost planning and pre-production for the whole trilogy. That costs money. Disney won't allow it. Well, it wasn't Disney who made Hobbit. I mean, you could argue that for the Star Wars films. But the Star Wars prequels seem all over the shop to me. The first movie has no main character. I mean, there is no main character in that movie. Who is the protagonist of that story? Can't be Anakin. He doesn't turn up till halfway through. Can't be Obi-Wan Kenobi. He doesn't do anything. He just follows other people doing things. He's not in the pod race. He's not instrumental in anything other than, once his mate Liam Neeson gets carks it, he kills the bad guy. Well, he doesn't even kill the bad guy because they've retrofitted that now to say, in the Star Wars universe, if you get cut in half, fall down a tube, you can survive that. because of course you can. Um, but yeah, terrible characterization, and I can see that George Lucas just wanted to make those movies to stop someone else from making them. I think that was his main thing. He just didn't want anyone else to make those movies, so he made them. They appear to me like, you know, in the 1990s, they made like a version of Fantastic Four just so they could keep the rights to it, and it got like no release at the cinema. They just made, because otherwise, when you write a story, you'll get an option from Hollywood, right? So if Hollywood got in touch with me and said we want to make Man of the World into a movie, I'd be like, yeah, get it, and they'll give me money, and then they'll have the option on it for 5 years, right? So say Man of the World, they go, that's a great story, Graham. We're going to give you $500,000, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm rich, and I run around with $500,000, spend it all on hookers and crack or whatever rich people spend their money on, and then at the end of the 5 years, if they haven't made the movie, the right to revert back to me, and I can sell them to another studio. That's the way it works, and that's the way like Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3 sort of came across to me. I might be wrong here. Like they sort of came across as like he was like, I've got to make these so no one else. But the mad thing about Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3 is they weren't made by a studio. They were distributed by 20th Century Fox, but they were not made by a studio. They were made by George Lucas. They are the biggest, most expensive independent movies of all time. He paid for them out of his own pocket because he was that rich at the end of the 90s. He was, you know, he was a billionaire. He could afford to do anything, and he did. He did. He made those movies, and unfortunately, there was no one around him because everyone working on those movies were people who were huge fans of Star Wars and huge fans of George Lucas, and no one wanted to push back and say. But I think that in his head, and you know, I'm not claiming to know everything about George Lucas, but I think that in his head, he was thinking more about the technology, more about pushing the technology. And it was those movies that pushed digital filmmaking into the realms that we're in now. This is why you're watching me on a webcam that's 4K. You know, this is Star Wars Episode 2 was the first fully digitally created film. The move to digital projectors, and some of us lament the loss of, you know, the good old days of actual cinema print, you know, where there's an actual reel to watch a movie in. And I've got to say, right, the last movie I ever watched with my dad before his dementia got too bad was Dunkirk, right, by Christopher Nolan. And we went to see a special 35mm screening of it, right? So this wasn't from a digital projector. And I'm going to say now, it was fucking shite. I had simply forgotten that you just had dirt all over the film, and you could spot the jumps when it, you know, went from one reel to the next, and it was just, and the sound would cut off and come back on again, and you know the little cigarette burn in the top corner and everything else, and a little bit of a wobble as it's going through the projector. I was like, oh, because you genuinely forget. You try watching a VHS video on an old CRT television, and you cannot quite believe how shit it looks. And it was a bit like that. But the move to digital projection was pushed very hard by George Lucas, who was like, why are we using film anymore? We need to be using just straight digital. Now, I know there's been a pushback against that. Christopher Nolan, he likes using his IMAX film, even though it only lasts for 2 minutes. So no scene can be more longer than 2 minutes. But also there's Steven Spielberg likes shooting stuff on film as well, which is fine for shooting stuff, because I agree, you know, there's a certain texture, there's a certain grain in film that looks fantastic that you can't quite replicate with, you know, a filter using digital. But don't forget, all of that stuff that's filmed on actual film cameras is then made digital, it's digitized, and then put on a computer, and then they fiddle about with it and add all the special effects, and then it goes out now to the cinemas digitally. But also, I've always felt like the digital revolution should have changed the way that cinemas operate, and they don't. So the way cinemas operate at the moment is back in the day, they used to have to buy these big cases full of film reels. Don't forget, a film would be like 8, 10, 12 film reels, and they were massive bloody things, right? And they came in these huge cases, right? Big, imagine like a big flag case. Imagine that chest there, about something like that, right? It would come in something like that, and you'd have the film reels in there. And So there was physical copies of the film, and they would have to go to each cinema. And what they'll do is, if there was a movie that they knew would do really well, and a film that they like a shit comedy or something that they knew wouldn't do very well on its own, they would say to the cinema owners, if you want to show the new Spielberg movie, you have to show the new movie by Brett Ratner or some shit director, right? And they'll have to put on screenings to nobody, empty rooms, but they'll have to waste their time in their cinema showing this stuff. Now, when we changed to digital, I thought, well, great, everything can just be downloaded now. Encryption, you've got the same level of encryption as what's it called? As fucking a banking, right? So each cinema owner has a certain key, and then that they have a watermark that is put onto their version of it. So if that particular version of it gets copied and is found online, the studios can figure out which cinema it came from, for instance, if they try and copy it and send it off somewhere else, put it online or whatever. But the way they went about doing digital is they made these mad cartridges that had the film on. And these films, I mean, they're a few gigabyte, but you can fit them on a hard drive. Like the 2 terabyte hard drive would easily fit a Hollywood movie, in 4K on it, easily in 8K it would fit on. But they made it so that there was these things that you had to use, and they would only use with the certain projectors, because they wanted to keep hold of the cinemas. They wanted to make sure that the cinema owners couldn't just go mad and just say, I'm going to show whatever films I want. We're going to have screenings of this film and then that film. We're going to do a thing where, a new movie comes out and it's a remake, or we're going to show the original and then the remake afterwards and let people vote on which was better, whatever. And giving those cinema owners a lot more freedom. Instead of doing that, they went the other way and said, no, we're going to make it more, just as restrictive as it was when it was a physical box full of film. And another thing on the back of this is subtitles. Like in the 1990s, if you wanted to go and see a subtitle screening, there'll be like 1 or 2 subtitle prints of a movie in the whole of the UK. And they would literally be couriered from one cinema to the other across the run of the film. And obviously films are only on the cinema now for like a couple of weeks, whereas back in the past, you'd have a film that would be on at the cinema for like up to 3-4 months. So it would go around and you'd have one screening with subtitles, because that was the only print that had the subtitles hard code, printed on the actual film itself. Whereas now it's just a case of, it should be just a case of pressing a button saying subtitles on. But even now it's not that easy, because the hold that the cinema owners have, the studios have over the cinema owners. So I'll give 2 examples. I went to see the last but one Mission Impossible movie at the Tyneside Cinema in Newcastle, and it said it came up with the subtitles were like here at the bottom of the screen, so you could see the top row, but you couldn't see the row below it. It was just set to, I think the subtitles have been set to the wrong aspect ratio or something like that. So I went out and said the subtitles aren't showing right, and they went okay, and they let the movie run for 15 minutes, right? And then they had to stop it, and I thought that they would start it again from where they were, right? But they didn't. They started it again at the beginning of the movie with the subtitles in the right place. And it took them a few goes to get it right. So by the time the movie actually started, we were about 25 minutes, half an hour beyond the scheduled start time, right? Of the actual movie, not the trailers and everything, the actual start time of the movie, which meant that me and Kat, because we got the train to Newcastle from Durham, we had to leave before the end of the movie, because our last train was like at 11 o'clock and we wouldn't have made it to the train station in time if we stayed to watch the rest of the movie. So we ended up missing the rest of the movie because we had to go home. Which, if you made the trip all the way to Newcastle to watch a movie to get the subtitle screening, but they had to start it again. I was like trying to think, like, why would they have to start it again? There must be a reason for that. And we went to see The Magic Faraway Tree a few weeks ago here in Durham at the Durham Gala, and the movie started and there was no subtitles. So I went out to the concession stand and said, listen, there's no subtitles on the movie. Can you sort that out? And they went, yeah, okay. They stopped the movie about 10 minutes in, and then they had to start it again from the beginning, right? And I was like, and it took ages. It took absolutely ages. And I said to them afterwards, what's the story? Why can't you just press the button and the subtitles turn on? And they went, well, because of the way that films are distributed, if we start a screening and we have to we have to do something technical, we have to restart it. And we have to log it with the distribution company that we've restarted the movie, and we've got to prove that we're not like showing it twice, but only showing it, pretending to show it once. And there's a lot of red tape and stuff like that. So I think that they'd actually, and the same thing happened in Newcastle, I think they'd had to write to someone at the distribution company and ask permission for them to restart the movie. And that's what took so long. I just, with the subtitles on and stuff like that, it's like why I appreciate that there are filmmakers out there who are pushing the envelope, because the system needs to change. This system is ridiculous. The one that we've got at the moment is absolutely batshit insane as far as I'm concerned, because it's still it's a digital world, but it's still working in like an optical mindset where cinemas can only use these cartridges that, and that's the one that they get, and they've got to rent it, and it costs X amount of thousands of pounds a week to rent that cartridge. And the cinemas are taking fuck all money. And this is why cinemas are closing across the country and not taking as much money, because, and this is another reason why they're charging £18 a seat. Because they have to. They don't make the money otherwise. Or they charge, £5.60 for a bucket of popcorn. I say bucket. What I really mean is just like a little tiny bit of. Didn't watch the second to last Mission Impossible film, but I'm willing to believe there was a Tom Cruise running scene. Yes, he ran. He ran. Good cinemas do have subtitle technology, like special glasses. Unfortunately, they also allow you to see everything because they're made by people who made They Live glasses. Yeah. I do think that every film should have subtitles, and if you're going to moan about it, maybe they could have glasses that you can wear that filter out the subtitles. How was that how Adam Sandler's films were made into cinemas? They're part of a package deal. Yes. Although Adam Sandler's films make a load of money. I mean, they're not for me. I don't find them funny, but they exist, and people go and see them. I think they're funny. Don't talk to me about my itchy arse. Oh no, Mr. Itchy Anus. From what was that? From New Zealand. There was a guy called Mr. Itchy Anus, and his name was pulled out of the phone book by on Have I Got News for You in the 1990s, and he ended up having to change his name. Poor guy. Forgive me saying, but shut up. That my bloody days, Lord in heaven, that would be the most amazing thing ever. To Jenny Robinson. What's this? Was Jenny Robinson saying the best thing ever? I've missed it. Witchy Goth, Cuthbert. I can't find the thing that you mentioned. Oh, maybe it came up on the other feed. My mother being 3/4 deaf, I always enjoyed subtitles, but I go all in. I like having everything turned on. The scripted video for the blind director's cut. Cunt. Sorry, I think you mean cut there. It gave me give it to me all at once. Yeah, I as someone with ADHD, I like having the subtitles. I don't like going to the cinema and going, what did they say? What was that? What was that? If I missed something, I want to rewind it and watch it again so I can actually get what they're saying. I always like movies with subtitles more than not. I've noticed cinemas recently a bit more laced about bringing your own food in since they started closing it down a lot more. I always take my own food in. There's a pound stretch around the corner from the Durham Odeon. I just go in there. It's a quid for a massive bag of popcorn. It's a quid. It's going into the pound stretcher. Thanks very much. Or Poundland or whatever it's called. In Newcastle, perhaps they scanned the wrong barcode. Sorry, Geordies. My Stream Deck doubles as an emulation machine for all retro consoles prior to PS3. Lol. Ben Ridding says, I haven't been to the cinema for years. Well, Ben, maybe you're over the age of 35. Apparently, people over the age of 35 go to the cinema on average once a year in this country. Once a year on average. I mean, I try to get there once a week, but I'm a weirdo. I said Stephen Colbert is writing a Tom Bombadil film. Oh no. Okay, news. I don't know how good that's going to be. But yeah, Stephen Colbert is a huge Tolkien fan. He's a huge Tolkien nerd, isn't he? I can't watch anything without subs now as I've gotten older, says Ben. Yeah, yeah. Well, this is the mad thing, Ben. 10% of the population, I think 11% of the population have hearing loss, hearing difficulty. And so you're shutting out 11% of the population by not having subtitles on all your films. I think they should be on all your films. But if they do this in the same way that we say, if it, you know, they change they use a statutory instrument to amend the Equality Act to say that trans women are women, right? But if you're going to say that, you'd have to say, okay, we'll also have to say a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate. Therefore, on the back of that, you have to make it easier for trans women to get a gender recognition certificate, right? So in the same way, if a similar way, not the same way, but there's a similar way, if they do say all films have subtitles now, and that's just the way it is, like it is in many other countries where they don't dub the films. This is a country where 99.9% people are literate; they can read the bloody subtitles. But I understand why people have a problem with comedies in particular, where the subtitles are unsympathetic to the plot of the movie. Let's say. Unsympathetic to the lines that the characters are saying, and the problem with a lot of subtitling is that it's the last thing they do. They don't give a shit about it. They don't think about it, and so you will have a joke where you have the setup and the punchline at exactly the same moment come up on the screen, so you'll actually be able to read the punchline or the word that they say before the actor actually says it. And what they need to do is look at those subtitles and the way that they are presented and make sure that the setup is shown then. And then as they deliver the punchline comes on and a separate slug on a separate subtitle, not all on the screen at once. And I saw the Death of Stalin on with subtitles, and they fucked the film because they ruined every single joke because you saw the punchline of the joke before the character actually said it. And there was no, and one of the big things in comedy obviously is timing, and it ruined the comedy timing of that movie. And I came out, one of my friends has grumbled about those subtitles ever since because it was just like they ruined the movie. Because it was like spoilers. It was like a spoiler a split second before the character did that thing or said that thing. I know what you fellas mean about games. The gaming industry has always been greedy bastards. For the last 10 years or so, it's been getting silly. I don't think the gaming industry's always been greedy bastards. I take issue at that, Tommy. I think in the 1980s, you had a lot of really good bedroom coders who were making fantastic games. In the 90s, you had Sensible, you had Team 17, you had some really good software houses that were making really, really, really good games, and it wasn't necessarily a cash grab. I think that is more, yes, you're right, in the last sort of 20 years, definitely. But if it was just a smash and grab for money, why hasn't Rockstar delivered whatever it's called these days? Why hasn't Grand Theft Auto 6 come out? Well, because they want to get it exactly right to the whatever they want to do. I don't think it's necessarily churn out a sequel as soon as possible and just get the money from it. Because especially with video games, shit video games, especially when they're part of a franchise, they tend to do really, really badly. Just ask Duke Nukem Forever. Isn't subtitles AI generated? It is here on this. When you're watching this, if you're watching it with subtitles, then yeah, it is AI generated. But which is good in a way because it changes the context of what people are saying. So live transcribe, when we first started using that, me and Kat, 8 years ago, or whatever. My partner's deaf, by the way, if you're new here. We started using live transcribe, and it would try and work out what each noise was that you were making, and it would get it all wrong, terribly wrong. Whereas now it'll spit out a sentence that someone's saying, but then it will actually go back and change the sentence to make it make sense in the context of what you're talking about. So that's improved a lot. But still, when you're watching AI generated subtitles online, especially on a comedy thing, like I really hate that Ryan George, who does the pitch meeting, great videos, really funny videos, but he doesn't make them accessible for deaf people because he doesn't make his own subtitles. He relies on the AI generated subtitles. And like, I understand doing subtitles is an absolute ball ache. It really is. It takes a long, long time. You have, say, 5 minutes of video. It's going to take you an hour to do the subtitles of that, at least an hour, to get it all right, especially if you're doing a comedy bit. But when you've got something like Ryan George and he's got these two people talking to each other, he's got the director and he's got the producer guy and he's got the scriptwriter guy talking to each other, and the subtitles are showing what the phrase is and then what the response is to that on the same screen, it fucks up the comedy. It really does. So yeah, the Dead Space remake was excellent because it didn't sell because it didn't sell 5+ million copies, EA have put a hold on the remake of 2. For me, getting at the previous price was a bargain, and my OLED 1 terabyte is used mostly for consoles. Add me if you like Daylight, Cosmic Fire 420. Pete says, I have a cousin-in-law that produces video games. The first Formula 1 game on the PS2 Micro Machines version V3 were his games. I haven't seen him in years, but I knew the last time he did Lego Dimensions. I loved Micro Machines, although that fucking, I think it was the course that was on the snooker table, and this is back in the day when you couldn't save a game, so you had to start at the beginning if you fucking fell off the snooker table. There was one course on it, and I think you had to go from one snooker table to the other on a playing card, and I kept falling off, and it was like the most frustrating thing in the world. Micro Machines, like the 10th race or something, you had to go back to the beginning. Had to go back to the beginning, but yeah, Micro Machines, fantastic game. I mean, Lemmings, absolutely fantastic game by a group of people up in Scotland called DMA Design, who then went on to create a little known game called Grand Theft Auto, which no one ever talks about these days because it sank without a trace. For those of you who were there, Granger. Elvis has left the building. Anyway, so yes, going back to Obsession and the Backrooms, right? Hollywood keeps asking where the next generation of filmmakers is while ignoring the fact they've been making films on YouTube for years. This matters because cinema is supposedly in crisis, and yet audiences are clearly willing to go to the cinemas when they're offered something fresh and strange, exciting and affordable. Obsession is excellent because it takes a simple horror premise and pushes it into genuinely uncomfortable moral territory, right? Normally, in a horror movie, there's a bad person and they're doing bad things and the bad person is stopped, right? Every movie is this, right? Every movie is somebody wants something and they're having trouble getting it, right? That's the plot of every single movie that's ever been made. Somebody wants something and they're having trouble getting it. Maybe not a documentary or some like, ASMR stuff, but obviously if there's a plot, the plot is generally someone wants something and they're having trouble getting it. And in a horror movie, that is usually in a standard movie that isn't a horror, usually the person needs some change in their life, and they don't. And by the end of the movie, they'll get what they get what they need, not necessarily what they want. Sometimes they get what they want, but sometimes they get what they need is right, a kick up the arse usually. And then you've got horror movies, which are a bit weird in that they don't follow the same sort of people want change, and then they have to deal with the effect of the change that they've created, or whether they've gone on an adventure or whether they killed the king or whatever they've done, they have to deal with the consequences of that change. Horror films are a bit different because they are a film where someone just wants to return to the status quo. So they're sitting there, they're perfectly happy, having a shower in an old barn in the middle of the woods, and then someone comes along and ruins the shower because he chased them through the forest with a hacksaw. And this is standard Hollywood's horror films. I mean, this is horror films as going way back. Somebody just being chased around by a monster, whether that's a psychopath or whether it's an alien or a genuine, an ogre or something, or some supernatural being that can come in from your dreams or has lived at the bottom of the lake for 20 years. You can take all these ideas and then make them into a really, really effective horror movie. But generally speaking, Freddy Krueger is evil. You know that, right? And Jason Voorhees is just fucking evil. The kids in the Scream franchise who turn out to be the bad guys, Billy and that, they're just bad people. They're the bad people and they need to be taken out, right? What I find interesting about Obsession, without giving too much away, the protagonist isn't necessarily a bad person. He makes some bad decisions, but you get to see the this idea. He makes this wish, um, and this idea could have been silly, it could have been disposable, but the film treats it as a violation of autonomy because he takes the free will of this girl that he likes away from her because he wishes that she loves him. He wishes that she loves him when she doesn't. And Burr's wish is not romantic. It's not shown as being romantic. It's shown as being selfish, cowardly, and horrifying. Which it absolutely is, and the horror comes from watching Nikki, the woman in it, lose control of herself while Burr, that name was picked for a reason, the guy slowly reveals that his nice guy persona is not the same thing as actual goodness. And the film understands something very modern: the fear of rejection, the fear of honesty, the fear of vulnerability, and the temptation to avoid difficult conversations entirely. And Burr does not ask Nikki out like a normal person should do. He bypasses her consent, and that's the moral rot at the center of the film. And Nikki's performance is fucking fantastic. Honestly, like, I know it's a horror movie, I know it's a low budget horror movie, but if she doesn't get nominated for an Oscar for this, I won't be happy. I won't be happy. She should definitely be, the actress should definitely be given at least nominated for an Oscar. But her performance is key because it's not just like possessed girl. She's possessed by this wish. It's not that she becomes scary. She is clearly a person trapped inside a forced version of love. And that's where the real horror lies, because occasionally she flashes back into her real persona and she's like, what the fuck is going on? As you would. And the film it's funny as well as horrible. It is genuinely hilarious. Like, there's part of it, but the comedy doesn't undercut the horror. It just sharpens it. And the low budget works in its favor because the film isn't focused on spectacle so much, which I don't mind. Look, I don't mind going to the cinema and the story filling the whole screen. I get that. I like I said when I was doing the 65-hour movie marathon, if you're there around hour 60, I was talking about how movies, that my rule for movies should always be, does this work as a plot in a soap opera, in a standard soap opera? And if the answer is yes, don't make a film of it. Just don't. No one needs to see that drama. You've got to have a drama that's somehow heightened in order to get people off their arse, off the sofa, to actually go to the cinema, to see, pay money to go and see this. If the drama could just be easily a plot line in an episode of EastEnders or Coronation Street, then don't bother making a movie. Do not bother making a movie out of it. But the low budget works in its favor because the film is focused intently rather than on spectacle, but it's focused on concept, character, tension, and timing, rather than expensive sort of things blowing up and spaceships and aliens and all that kind of stuff. And there's a point or two obsession that feels very generational. This feels like a very, very Generation Z movie. It speaks directly to the anxieties of younger people who've grown up online. It captures the awkwardness of modern dating, where emotional risk feels claustrophobic, and social media has trained people to curate themselves and avoid cringe, avoid embarrassment, treat vulnerability as danger. And the film turns that paralysis into like a supernatural horror film. And the question is not simply what if your crush loves you too much, or it is rather, what if your refusal to be honest destroyed another person's agency? Because at the start of the movie, Nikki, the woman, asks Burr, the man, straight up, do you like me? And he goes, oh, no. When he clearly does, but it's easy. He doesn't want to put himself out there because the fear of rejection is stronger than the compulsion to get, I guess, find out. And this kind of debate is gold for modern horror, because the films don't just watch the film, right? We don't just watch the film. We actually afterwards we dissect it, meme it, explain it, fight over it, recommend it. Femi made a movie about, maybe the movie, sorry. Femi made a short about, he made a TikTok about this movie. I've never seen Femi talk about a movie before. I mean, perhaps he does. He talks about Buffy a lot, Giles. But he generally doesn't. And I guess he talks about superhero movies, doesn't he? He likes his superhero movies. But yeah, I've never seen him do a straight up video about a particular film, and yeah, and it's because it's one of those things, you watch the movie and then you talk about it afterwards, and I love that. I genuinely love that about movies. They can take you to another place, they can scare you, they can terrify you, they can excite you, whatever, make you laugh. But then, if a movie, you watch it and then that's it, all done, and you go off and do something else, and it doesn't stay with you in any way, you don't want to talk about it afterwards. Like, I want to watch a movie and then have a discussion about it and then go, wow, what the hell? And this is why, that this has been such an interesting thing to happen. And I hope that this is the beginning of something here, and it goes into more than just horror movies eventually. This is a good way to start. But yeah, make your money if you do horror movies, and then actually take on board some of the ways of making films that don't cost an absolute fortune. The other movie is Backrooms. It's directed by a 20-year-old. Oh God, they're so young, and they get to direct movies. But it's possibly one of the strongest horror ideas to come from the internet age. This idea of the liminal space. Get the word for it right, Graham? Liminal space. The fear is not like gothic castles or vampires, haunted houses, haunted spaceships. It's beige carpet. It's yellow wallpaper. It's buzzing lights. It's endless empty rooms. It's a very YouTube age horror. The everyday made uncanny, and it works because Backrooms feels familiar and impossible at the same time, and the terror is not like there's a monster with a not just there's a monster with a who's going to be a bit stabby. It's a terror that the space should not exist. And the original appeal of Backrooms is quite clever. It's a mystery. There's no obvious origin. There's no clear rules. No comforting explanation. Oh, he was burnt to death by these by what was it? He got off. Freddy Krueger abused children, and then he got off on a technicality, and then the parents were banded together and burnt him to death. There's a mythology, there's rules, there's ideas, but then you put people into a world where there are no clear rules. And I think a bit about the uncanniness of the TV show Severance, which you haven't watched. If you haven't watched, it's really, really good. I really recommend it. But that sort of taps into this sort of liminal space between worlds. The idea in Severance is that you have your outside persona, and then you get into the lift, and then you go down into do your job. And when you go down to do your job, you are severed from your outside persona, and you become a new persona, which doesn't know anything about your outside persona, and your outside persona doesn't know anything about your inside. Your innie knows nothing about your outie, and you're two the same people living in the same body. But for the person, the outie goes into the lift, and then the working day is over, and they come back out the lift. It's gone like that for them, right? Whereas the person who's trapped down in the basement working, they are getting into the lift at the end of the working day, and then they close their eyes, they open them again, and they're back into the next working day, like that. There's no leisure time, there's no time away from work, they're just purely working. And it's a really interesting concept to explore. And then you've got Kane Parsons, who made the movie and understood the atmosphere before Hollywood got anywhere near it. And this is the important point, like that audience for the Backrooms vibe was already there. The mythology was already alive. The film didn't manufacture interest from scratch. And one of the issues with sort of turning online horror into feature films is that studios often want laws and answers and scaffolding to build a franchise. And I believe this, right? So one of the things that I think horror suffers from is showing too much of the monster. genuinely showing, like Alien does not show much of the alien, and I think it works so much better because of that. It's not clearly a bloke in a suit, right? Although it is. Jaws, when you see the shark, they're the worst bits, because the shark looks fake as fuck, right? But where the menace of the shark is, it's your imagination runs riot, and that's where Jaws works a lot more effectively. And that wasn't because they didn't want to show the shark too much; it's because they couldn't, because they knew that Bruce the shark looked a bit shit. So and it didn't work. They had a mechanical shark, and it went in the water. Its tail was supposed to move, but it didn't, and it just looked crap. And they went, well, we can't use this, so let's use the shadow of the shark in the water, which is the fin moving through the water to get that kind of, because your brain fills in the details. And horror becomes weaker when it explains the thing that makes it frightening. And Backrooms are scary because it kind of resists explanation. And I think the more like a film turns a mystery into a mythology, it risks sort of shrinking the concept a little bit. I don't want to know the backstory of every single bad guy. Like why were they bad? Oh, someone was mean to them in school, and that's why they were bad. There's a terrible, terrible, terrible Dan Brown book called The Lost Symbol. And God, you know what I lost? I lost a few hours reading that bloody thing. And it's shite. It is absolutely shite. And the concept is, sorry, spoilers for anyone who's not read it. I think it's the one Dan Brown book that didn't get turned into a movie. I think Angel and Demons, Da Vinci Code, and the other one got turned into a movie. The one about the virus that was going to get released, they got turned into the Lost Symbol didn't, because it was shite. But the motivation behind the bad guy was that he was some like preppy rich kid, nepo baby, and he'd gone on holiday or something to Turkey, and the authorities had locked him up for getting drunk and doing something. I don't know. I can't remember the exact specifications of what happened, the details, but essentially he was locked up in Turkey for the night, and his rich dad could have got him out, but he said no, he deserves to learn a lesson to not be a prick. And because of that one night in that Turkish jail, that was it. He went on a murder spree and killed everyone and tattooed his whole body, and it's just like, I'm reading this after spending 6 days in a jail cell in Cape Verde in the basement of a police station, and 6 days in a jail in Congo, and I'm like, that's your motivation for your big bad, that's pretty lousy. Do you know what would be better? Not knowing the motivation, just like, because that's scarier, isn't it? That's scarier that it could be anyone for any reason. There is no reason. It's not for any reason. There is no reason. They're just crazy. They're just crazy, and they just want to kill. Yeah, and I think that the sort of habits of Hollywood can really damage sort of internet-born horror, and the lesson should be trust the audience, trust the filmmaker, don't over-explain the nightmare. And just to mention Blair Witch as well, the obvious historical parallel, because it looked like it had changed everything. It was cheap, it was strange, it was internet savvy before social media, before YouTube even existed, and it was sold through mythology as much as traditional advertising, and it proved that audiences would turn up for a horror film that felt raw, new, and outside the system. But I think Hollywood learnt the wrong lessons. Instead of empowering thousands of low-budget filmmakers, the industry mostly copied the surface features, the found footage concept, the shaky camera, cinematography, the fake documentaries, the viral marketing, these gimmicks that were successful for Blair Witch, but they tried to copy Blair Witch. They tried to copy that one movie instead of copying the fact that these young filmmakers had made a very watchable movie. It's not fantastic, but it's for $27,000. I mean, if I gave you $27,000 right now and said go make a movie, I don't think you can make a better movie than Blair Witch Project. If I gave you $1 million, maybe you could, but not for $27,000. It's a really, really good movie for that. For that price. But then they made a sequel, didn't they? Season of the Witch or something, and it was shite. It was just utter shite. Donnie Darko, the first one of that was, they made a movie. It was really good. It was really unsettling. It took us to places that we hadn't really felt before in the cinema. And they made a sequel to it. It was just shite. It was just absolutely shite. And it's just this thing of like Hollywood continuously learns the wrong lessons from these things happening. And I'm just hoping that this doesn't happen again. And the one of the big things that the YouTubers who made Obsession and Backrooms have done is that they've brought their audience with them. They've already got the audience. They've already tested the voice. They've already survived the brutal attention economy. And YouTubers have to learn quickly what works and what doesn't, because the viewers click away almost instantaneously. With YouTube, you have so many metrics that you can go through. You can see the exact moment that people turned off, stopped watching you. You can see moments that people rewound and watched again, maybe because they liked that bit, or maybe it's because they didn't understand what you said. And they would go back and look at it. I know I do things a little bit differently on here because I don't do pre-records. I don't obsess over the analytics too much, because I have my gang of people like you watching this who watch it and jump in the chat, and we have a little bit of a conversation. And we don't get that much in super chats. In fact, I should probably restore the super chat thing, because I think we've run out of time, or we will do in a moment. I'm going to remove that. But goal successfully disabled. Let's do one little super chat and we can get confetti. So there you go, redone that. But yes, with YouTube as well, you've got filmmakers are forced to write, shoot, direct, edit, perform, promote, and analyze audience responses all at once. That's all put on you as a content creator, and that's one of the reasons it's so fucking difficult. And the people who manage to do it, I do have respect. I mean, it might be begrudging respect to something like Mr. Beast, but it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and they're not. They're seriously not. But what being able to do all this stuff means, it creates practical, adaptable filmmakers who understand pacing, hooks, atmosphere, audience retention in a way that traditional filmmakers who are thinking more of like, well, if I can do a good poster and a good marketing campaign, people will pay for the ticket and they'll sit there for 2 hours and watch the whole movie, which they generally do, right? On YouTube, it's different, right? You've got to hook people, and you've got to keep them hooked for the whole 2 hours or however long your show is. And this isn't something that people have learned in film school. This isn't something that people pick up from working on films as a kid, or being on film sets as a kid because their daddy is one of the executive producers. This is like live fire training here. Oh, Paulie Donkey, thank you so much for the gift of the gift membership, which has gone to Janice P84. Well done, Janice. You are now a member of the channel. So welcome, Janice. You are awesome. And Paulie Donkey, thank you so much. That is very kind of you. There you go. I'll get you a packet of gum at the cinema. Indeed it will. But yeah, Hollywood is painfully stuck in its ways. And it keeps betting on franchises, prequels, sequels, legacy characters, spin-offs, recognizable brands. And it makes sense on a spreadsheet, but it's made cinema feel really stale over the last 20 years or so. And the industry keeps treating young people as if they only want the IP that they're familiar with, when successful films like Obsession and Backrooms suggest they want something a bit different. And another thing is that star power matters a lot less than it used to. So back in the day, hardly anyone would read movie magazines like Empire. I mean, they had good circulation, but like as a percentage of the cinema going public, they were a minority of people who would buy Empire magazine or Total Film or something, or Sight and Sound, to find out what movies were like. Generally, people went, oh, there's a new film with Tom Cruise in. Oh, there's a new film with Harrison Ford in. Oh, there's a new film with Wesley Snipes in. I like him. I'll go watch the movie. Or it's got it's got Sharon Stone in it, or Kim Basinger, and people are like, oh, I fancy them. I'll go and watch the movie that's got them in. That doesn't happen anymore because the internet gives you an instant review of every movie that comes out. Hollywood can't make dross anymore and just about get away with it. It needs people to go on the internet and go, that was a great movie. And if it makes a shit movie, people aren't going to go and see it. So star power means less than it used to. What matters more now is concepts, authenticity, online credibility matters so much more. And a huge marketing budget for something like John Carter of Mars or I mean, going back to the 90s, the Wild Wild West, can't fake the feeling that as grown organically. And I always feel like horror is the great democratic genre. The reason why, as soon as I sell my island, hopefully, after I've paid back all the debts to people who I owe money to, so if that includes you, I look forward to being able to do that. But I also want, if I've got some money left over, I want to start making my own horror movies. I've got 4 that I have my idea of. The Soggy Biscuit trilogy. Obviously, there's 4 in the trilogy because I'm a big fan of Douglas Adams, and maybe there should be 5. But yeah, they're all horror movies, and the reason why they're all horror movies is I know that I can make them low budget. I know I don't need to have a star in them. I know that I don't have to use Hollywood fucking producers and all that kind of stuff need to be involved. They don't. I can just make the movies. 28 years later was shot on iPhones, for God's sake. You don't need and one of the things with horror movies in particular, you don't need a Marvel-sized budget to scare people. You need timing, atmosphere, imagination. You think of like Night of the Living Dead, Halloween, Evil Dead, Saw, Paranormal Activity, Get Out. All of these new YouTube era films have proved the same basic point, that horror rewards bold ideas. Horror audiences are open to go and see stuff that doesn't have a new name in it, or that has a new name in it, doesn't have a bankable celebrity in it, and they're willing to take a punt on it if that premise is if the premise is strong, and it makes this natural bridge between DIY filmmaking and mainstream cinema. And to go back to what I was saying at the top of the show, Universal, New Line Cinema, A24 all made their mark by making horror movies. It's the best way to do it. It is possibly the most democratic films that you could possibly make, in that it appeals to a broad audience. Whereas in Britain, because we don't really make that many horror films, not as many as we should, because when we do, they're very, very good. We have made some fantastic horror films, but they're very few and far between in this country. We should be doing way more unsettling horror that taps into traditions in the UK. We should be doing loads of more folk tales, like folk horror tales and stuff like that, and getting that ambience right, getting the atmosphere. We should absolutely be doing that. And horror is a fantastic way of getting into cinema. We in the UK have a huge problem with class. We genuinely do. Films are made, you look at Emerald Fennell and Hair movies, they are made by rich, posh people who went to rich, expensive schools like Emerald Fennell did down in Bristol, and they make movies, and everyone in the movie is very posh, very rich, and they're trying to tell a story about a drama that about posh rich people, and you're watching it going, I feel a bit of a disconnect here. There's a bit of a disconnect between the audience and the people making the movie. Whereas horror films, anyone could pick up a camera, anyone could pick up a phone and make a half decent stab at it. Literally. Starlog Cinephile, what was the other one? Mags, Starlog Cinephile. Yeah, thanks Paulie Donkey for the £2 super chat, which means that we are free to go for the confetti. Hey, £2. It's not 175 million, but I'm working on it. But yeah, I mean, this is. I'll start another goal so we can have more confetti if you want. This is why my movies. So there's The Hills Have Monocles. There is Boxing Day, which is about the Boxing Day hunt. There's Class War, which is about an old school that's existed since the 7th century AD, and they have their own ways of doing things, and they get their first Ofsted inspection. Think about the horror implications of that. Daylight horror, folk horror. Think of like The Wicker Man meets Midsummer meets If. And then the last one is The Bunker, which is someone I can't believe they haven't made this yet. It's more of a thriller, actually. But it's about, one of these billionaires who has a fucking bunker off the coast of Albania, and then the people who made it decide he tries to kill them all so they don't know where it is. Well, it's not off the coast of Albania then, is it? It's somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. He tries to kill all the people who worked on it, a la Better Call Saul, if you know what I'm talking about. It goes. They don't manage to kill everyone, and the people who survive, the engineers and the architects and the builders who survive, suss out where the island is and go and fucking try and take down this billionaire who killed them, and tried to killed their families, killed their friends. They're all. I mean, they all have. I have this idea that starts with a very, very, very simple concept, and then builds into, dead cheap to make, and then builds into things that are more expensive to make. But the horror tropes. I mean, the horror genre is a brilliant place to start. And then I want to make movies that are. I want to make musicals. I want to make kids films. I want to make dramas set in the jungle in the the South American jungle in the 1760s. I've got scripts that I've written that I'd love to make and actually turn into something. But that's down the line. I start with horror every time. Start with horror. In fact, the second short film, or fourth short film that I made was called The Censor, and it was about a guy who had the scissors cutting the films for the BBFC and goes mad one day and starts cutting people with his scissors for breaking the rules of cinema censorship. So someone who swears before the 9 p.m. watershed gets their tongue cut out. Other appendages go depending on what people have done. That he says it's against the rules of these people need to be censored in their everyday life. He takes the rules of cinema censorship into actual the real world, and that it's a horror movie. It's it's a comedy horror movie, but it's a horror movie nonetheless. And I made it with 15 quid in the packet of crisps with my mates in Liverpool. It's really fun, and I'll have to. I've got to do an upgraded version of it for YouTube, so I'll try and get that up for you at some point. I'm kind of a bit more motivated to redo it now, because not redo it. I'm not going to refilm it, but re-edit it a little bit and bunk up the quality of the images and things like that, which I can do now. Take it up to 4K. I have a film idea. It's set in prison, and it's called The Nonce Basher. Excellent. Elle says Boba Fett, his rocket went off when he was polishing his helmet. I got a lot of thrust in his rocket. Star power does mean a lot less, but there are certain actors us younger people really love. William Dafoe and Nicolas Cage being the main two. Honestly, I kind of recommend Spider Noir. I know it's on Amazon, so whatever. But like, Spider Noir is so much fun. I had a really, really good time watching Spider Noir with Nicolas Cage playing a version of Spider-Man in the 1930s during Prohibition, the end of Prohibition, and it's fantastic. It's just I like, honestly, laugh out loud moments all the way through, and just a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. Anyway, so yeah. Let's talk about the YouTube advantage as well. YouTube isn't just a place to dump content, right? It's a training ground. It really is. Creators learn what works by making things repeatedly. You don't just make one movie and then it flops at the cinema and then you never make a movie again. You're constantly creating content. I create 1 or 2 pieces of content every single day, and we get immediate feedback. Hello. We build communities. Hello. If you want to join in with this community, just hit the subscribe button and join in. We develop a direct relationship with our viewers. Like, I don't think too many filmmakers like go and say, "Hey, we're going to be in the Jacaranda on the 20th in Liverpool. Come and join us." You don't see that too much. We're not waiting for permission from agents, from executives, from studios or festivals in order to start making content, which we can just do it. And this is a massive shift in power. The old days of everyone who gets to make movies, like Christopher Nolan or Benedict Cumberbatch or what's her name, Olivia Colman or Emerald Fennell or whoever, who went to private school. They all went to private school. Like, literally everyone you see in a British movie. Emily Blunt, not Emily Blunt. Yeah, Emily Blunt. She went to private school, didn't she? Yeah, you watch a movie these days and it's got a British actor in, or it's a British director. Then the director probably went to private school, or all the actors went to private school. It's not to say they're bad actors, not to say they're bad directors. It's just a bit unfair that the rest of us don't get a word in. But this has really given me hope. These 2 movies doing well, because now Hollywood's going to look at people like me who make YouTube shit, and they'll go, "Oh, you make YouTube shit. Maybe you could." Obviously, I'd need to be on a higher level than I am at the moment in terms of audience and everything. But still, it looks like an opportunity. It looks like the door is a little bit open, and we don't need Hollywood. This is the main thing about this. We don't need Hollywood. And the more people realize that we don't need Hollywood, the more the door opens and opens to more people making more stuff. And we need to break the Hollywood chokehold over what content it goes out on the cinemas. And I genuinely believe that we need to break the chokehold that cinema distributors and the movie studios have over our cinemas, where they say you have to show this film X many times, and they muscle out all the films by making them show the big tentpole releases. You've got to show X many screenings of this, or you won't get, this big film that you want later on in the year. Fangoria, CineFX, Cine Fantastique, Fantastic Films, Future Life, Cinemagic, all great magazines, and there was no other nothing at all. Kids these days don't know how lucky they are. That's very true. True, they all went to private school or to film directed by Shane Meadows. I mean, and the thing is, like, Shane Meadows, I fucking love Dead Man Shoes. One of my favourite British movies. Really, really, really good. Really gritty, gritty as fuck, but really good. With Paddy Constantine. But at the same time, yeah, you're right. I mean, there is a lot of... whenever... One of the things I have a problem with the whole class... I was still trying to talk about Hollywood more in this segment, but I'll just mention the British class thing. We are obsessed with class in this country. We just are. I wish we weren't, but we are. But a lot of the time, when you see a working class character in a film, it's generally been written by someone who doesn't know anyone who's working class, and so they become a caricature of the working class. Like, I hate to say it, but Audrey Hepburn's character, Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, is a caricature of the working class. A bit OTT, one might say. But what I would like to see is more joyous stories made by working class people about working class communities coming together and doing something really cool. I'd like to see that, but it doesn't happen very often. It's usually when you're making a movie about working class people, it's usually like a miserable misery fest of like people getting beaten up and then crying themselves to death. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. People might watch it on Film 4 at 11 o'clock at night because they can't sleep, but they're not going to pay money to go and see it at the cinema. Anyway, but yeah, it's a massive shift in power. And, a filmmaker with a strong channel as proof of audience before Hollywood ever gets involved. And that makes the old gatekeeping system look increasingly ridiculous. And then, young filmmakers do deserve a chance. The industry often talks about new voices while hiring people who are connected to the system. Young DIY filmmakers are not asking for charity. They are proving that they can deliver. They have ideas. They have audiences. They understand modern culture. They know how people consume stories now. They are often more technically capable than the older executives assume. They assume, oh, well, you don't know about cinematography. You don't know about... And the thing is that we have as well, like my generation and the Gen Zs out there, the thing that we have is access to all the movies. Another thing that, like, in the 70s, right, you couldn't watch old movies unless there was a special screening at the cinema. That was it. There was no VHS tapes. And then in the 1980s, VHS, brilliant. We could watch movies. We could get movies out from Blockbuster. But it's not like every movie was available, right? And then in the 90s, obviously, we had DVDs, which was absolutely fantastic for someone who's really into movies and hopes to be a filmmaker one day, because you could not just watch the movie, you can watch it back with the director's commentary and find out how they did things. It was really fascinating, getting that behind the scenes stuff that you didn't really get with a VHS copy of a film. You might get a little vignette at the end of a movie of how they did something, but generally speaking, it wasn't that comprehensive. But then moving it forward to now, every film is available. Every film that's ever been made everywhere is available. And it allows us to watch these things and analyze them and go, okay, that's how they did it. That's how they put that together. I have a film idea. A man does something bad and there's a woman witness. He hunts her down and goes cannibal on her. It's called Gladiator. The sequel is called Gladiator 2, is quite similar. I think that's a Vic Reeves joke, isn't it? The dove from above. Dove from above. He was Gladiator. There's a book called My Brother is a Cannibal by Henrietta Mann. He's working class, so he's got to live on a council estate, be an alcoholic, can't find a job, etc. Yes, Tommy, that's my issue. Why can't working class people go on a fantastical adventure? You know, you see this in American cinema, especially in the 80s. It was like a blue collar guy would go on a magical adventure. But you know, that blue collar guy in the 80s is very different from what you'd be a blue collar person now. Very, very different. Because that blue collar guy in the 1980s lived in a massive fucking house because you could buy that on a normal salary. But yes, the patronizing idea that YouTube creators are somehow less serious than real filmmakers is kind of collapsing at the moment, which is good. But the danger is that Hollywood is absorbing this movement. The danger is that Hollywood would, again, like with the Blair Witch Project, it won't learn from the movement. It'll simply buy up YouTubers. I'm available. Do you want to buy me up? Stand off their edges, attach them to existing franchises, and call that innovation. We've seen this a lot with like the Marvel movies, where they took a director who had made some great little indie movie, and then they put them in charge of this this Marvel movie or DC movie, and you ended up with shite like Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, which is fucking awful, or even worse, the version of was it the Marvel? Not the Marvels. What's it called? The Eternals, which is by far the worst Marvel movie, MCU movie. I'm aware that I think the Marvels has a lower rating, maybe on Rotten Tomatoes, whatever. But at least the Marvels had a few funny moments in it. Do you know what I mean? It had a bit of a laugh. The Eternals was so fucking po-faced and just shite and just like grindingly shite. Honestly, I didn't go to see it at the cinema because I'd heard it wasn't very good. But like, it's one of those movies where it's kind of like Coyote shite. Like you feel like gnawing your arm off if you had your arm trapped under someone, you'd gnaw it off to get away from this terrible, terrible film. And it's so bad that Rob Stark, I'm sorry, spoilers here, towards the end of the movie, he would rather fly into the fucking sun than be in that movie anymore. A character goes, right, I'm going to fly into the sun now. And they're all like, okay then, bye. It's that bad. It's that bad. But yeah, that was made by, what's her name? Zhao. Oh God, what's her name? Hang on, I'm going to look it up. I don't to look up her name now. Hamnet director Chloe Zhao. Chloe, I can't remember her first name. Chloe Zhao, who made Nomadland, which is fantastic, and she made Hamnet, which is fantastic. And in the middle, she made this terrible fucking Marvel movie. And so Hollywood goes, oh, wow, this person's got a real distinct voice and individual style. And, you know, they know what they're doing. They know how to... And then we'll give them this massive franchise and see how they do. And it's just... I mean, I guess sometimes it's worked, but mostly I don't think it has. Be watching a Marvel film and Spider-Man gets his arm cut off by the villain, and then Iron Man comes down and says, look, he's been disarmed. Marvel movies have a bad habit of putting comedy in serious moments and just killing it. Yeah, undercutting it. Paulie Donkey, Graham, supposedly membership gifts should be able to be in the creator goals. The help didn't say it, but it was. And Jim and I did now. Oh, well, I mean, Paulie Donkey, you put £2 in, and that should have come up as part of the goals. But it hasn't. So, you know. Oh, no, it did. I reset it, didn't I? Ugh. Anyway, yeah. But, yeah, if anyone else wants some confetti, I'll just start talking about politics again. So about Nigel Farage. It's really depressing that, like, on this channel, I know that if I do a show about Nigel Farage, I get loads of people watching it. Like that when we did Quagglebox on Thursday, it's got like 7,500 views, that fucking video. Or at least people clicked on it. 700. I don't think they watched the whole thing. I just so it called me a dickhead in the comments mostly. But you know, did that sort of thing. It's like, I don't want to be talking about, I want to be talking about movies. Yeah, there's also you know, if they did attach these filmmakers to existing franchise and call it innovation, it will be a waste of that opportunity. The point isn't to turn every YouTube filmmaker into a studio employee. I'd rather let them bring their own instincts, methods, their own weirdness into the cinema. And the worst outcome would be a wave of sterile internet horror films made by a committee, which is, look at Blair Witch Project 2. The best outcome would be a genuine opening of the gates where they would find filmmakers online and say, right, we're going to, do you want to make a movie? Yeah. Okay, well, here's $750,000. You go make a movie And if it's any good, it's, you know, that's a fraction of the marketing budget that we would have spent on something fucking awful that we had made, like John Carter of Mars. So it was just called John Carter in the end, wasn't it? But if the Iron Lung matters because it shows another route. This is another movie that's come out, Iron Lung, and it shows another route: self-financing, self-distribution, and direct mobilization of an audience. That's something that I would like to do. It's an independent science fiction horror movie, which is created by Marky Plyer. Marky Plyer, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, Marky Plyer. Marky Plyer. It came out in January this year, and it got mixed reviews from critics, but it grossed $51 million in the United States. And again, this is a really good example of a young filmmaker who just went out there and actually did it, which is what I want to do once I get the money for the island. I want to be able to make my own movie and self-distribute it, self-finance it, direct it, and get the audience together for it. This is kind of terrifying for the old system because it proves that studios are not the only way to reach cinemas, right? Studios have had a monopoly on the cinema for over 100 years now. They don't really want to give that up. But if creators can build audiences online, film projects themselves, and persuade fans to show up theatrically, then Hollywood's monopoly on movies weakens. Good. And not every creator can do that, obviously, but that fact, the fact that it's possible changes the situation that we're in at the moment. Looking at this fella, Mark Edward Fishback, his name is Marky Plyer. He's one of the most popular YouTubers on the platform, and he's known for his let's play videos of indie horror games. And he's made this movie. It took over 50 million at the box office, and it shows that we can change the system. We've got the platform to do it now. YouTube, yay! And audiences, they're not anti-cinema. They're not anti-cinema. People will go to the cinema. People enjoy watching movies with other people. They genuinely do. I know there's people out there who fucking hate it, right? Couldn't think of anything worse than being trapped in a dark room with a bunch of strangers to watch a movie for 2 hours. But some of us who really, really enjoy it because you've got this kind of, it's like going to the theatre because other people reacting to the movie, but also you've got the audience response to stuff, the groans and the laughter and whatever. But also you've got that intimacy that you can't have at the theatre because you can't get that close to the actors. You can see the pause of the people's faces on the screen and see the emotion on their faces if they don't have too much Botox injected into them, of course. People will go to the cinema for something that feels like an event. And horror is perfect for that because it's a communal experience. People want to scream, they want to laugh, they want to react and talk about it afterwards. And a really good horror movie becomes a great social experience, and that's something that streaming can't replace. So in a way, if you can take the audience from YouTube and then plunk them into the cinema, they'll have a very different experience in the cinema than watching stuff on YouTube. And cinema is expensive, but compared with concerts now, festivals, major live events, horror films are relatively accessible for young people, priced out of many cultural experience. A horror film can feel like a shared experience, a shared night out, something that they can talk about with their colleagues in work the next day. And it helps explain why films can break through theatrically. The problem isn't not that young people won't leave the house. It's the problem that they need a good reason. And Hollywood at the moment isn't giving them a good reason to leave the house. And what Hollywood should learn from this, but probably won't, is that they need to stop assuming that audiences only want familiar brands. They want to stop treating young filmmakers as risky while pouring hundreds of millions into tired franchises. Stop mistaking expensive for exciting, and stop over development of simple ideas until they lose all of their impact, all of their power. A simple idea can go a long way if done very well. And start backing low budget stuff that's original. Start trusting directors with distinctive voices to make their own shit. Stop taking them from the indie world and then forcing them to make your Marvel movie. Stop doing that. And start treating YouTube as a talent pipeline, not as a threat. We saw this week that last year it was shown that YouTube figures are overtaking was second only to the BBC in this country. And this year, just three days ago, there was a report that more people are watching YouTube than are watching Netflix. Start understand that that an audience built online is still an audience, and what Hollywood will probably learn instead is it'll commission like more creepypasta adaptations. It will search for the next Backrooms. It will sign young creators and surround them with executives who tell them what to do. It'll focus on the box office numbers rather than creative conditions that make these kind of films work. And the depressing possibility here is Hollywood sees the money but misses the point, which is why this would be a fantastic opportunity for someone in Britain who has a bit of wodge to set up a fucking movie studio in Britain. That goes, hey, we've got some talent here. Let's invest in that talent. But no, the only thing that British people want to invest in is fucking houses. That's it. Homes. Empty homes sometimes, but homes nonetheless. There'll be some empty office block, empty apartment block, sorry. Empty block of flats down in London. Yeah, I want that. I want to invest in that. I want to invest in an empty block of flats off the Mancunian way. Don't want to invest in the arts. No. And this is like, there's a broader cultural meaning here, which is about, it's more than just horror. It's about who gets to make great movies and whether cinema belongs only to corporations or whether we can democratize it and give it to people with ideas, cameras, editing software, and obsession. And the tools have been democratized. If you wanted to make the kind of shit that I've made over the years, back in the 80s, you couldn't do it. What a 4K bloody camera? Are you kidding me? That to get that quality of image, you probably have to use an IMAX camera, which is insanely expensive. You have to get the film, you have to process the film, you have to cut the film with a pair of scissors. I mean, the tools have been democratized. We have non-linear editing now. Since the 90s, we've had Adobe Premiere. We've been able to do it. You can do it now on your phone using CapCut. The distribution has become democratized. Like, I am going out now to the world. This has been broadcast essentially to anyone, anywhere in the world right now who wants to watch this. It's free to do so. And this is why these successes really matter, because the sort of, I guess, the last barrier is institutional respect for people who are coming up on the YouTube route. And as someone who makes content online, this is fucking exciting. That YouTube is often dismissed as disposable, but it's full of people teaching themselves the craft of filmmaking in real time in public. And this platform can be chaotic and exploitative and algorithm driven, but it also gives people, anyone who's got a camera, on which they do if they've got a phone, a smartphone, a way in, a camera and an internet connection. And it matters for anyone who's ever made something without permission, which is like me. The old model says wait to be chosen. The new model says make the thing, build the audience, and prove them all wrong. And obsession and Backrooms doesn't mean that Hollywood's dead. It just means that it just shows that Hollywood for the last few years has been looking in the wrong direction. The next great filmmakers may not be waiting tables in LA trying to get meetings with the higher up. They may be people uploading shorts that they've made from their bedrooms, the sheds, student flats, on a camera that they borrowed off their mate. The question is whether the film industry is brave enough to let them in without crushing what makes them interesting. Horror, these movies, I hope, Iron Lung and Obsession and Backrooms have opened the door a little bit, and I'm just hoping that Hollywood doesn't slam it shut again, like it often does. Paulie Donkey, what's going on? Paulie Donkey wants to say a lot of things. Previously, I threw in for a community thing because I like community. It's like supporting community, but it didn't trigger the confetti. Not complaining. Sorry about that. Art Mobile Studios moving to the UK. Are they? That'd be cool. When I was in film school, you couldn't use the Amiga editors until the third fucking year. Kids these days. Yeah. It's mad, that, isn't it? Like trying to do non-linear editing. What's it? The Amiga Video Toaster. Remember that? That's how all the effects for. That's how the effects for what's it called? Thingy were done. Babylon 5. Great days. So yeah, I'm pretty buoyed by this. I'm pretty buoyed by the success of these filmmakers, and I'm hoping that maybe I could dust off some of my short films and put them back online and get people on board and say, yeah, that was quite fun, Graham. Go and make some more stuff. That's what I hope. What I hope, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Twitch is quite big these days too. Yeah, Babylonia 5. It is indeed, Mystic. I should go out on Twitch at the same time that I go out on this. I think I can go out on 2 platforms at once on OBS these days, but I don't know if I need to get a plugin or something. But I should do that at some point. But yeah. Anyway, so I have rabbited on for nearly 2 bloody hours about filmmaking and these movies that come out. So if you get a chance and you do like horror movies, please don't go and see Obsession if you don't like horror movies, okay? And if you're particularly squeamish, because it's pretty visceral. It's very visceral. But yeah, please enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back this evening at 8 o'clock for the Sunday night social. So please kick back with me for that. And until then, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Paulie Donkey for the gift membership and also for the £2 super chat. Yes, I'm in the money. Okay, I'm earning nearly £2 an hour here. No, sorry, £1 an hour. Which is all good. So yeah, I'll hopefully see you tonight. And until then, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye. Here's a like.